My name is Jacob Vogelsang. I'm a contributor to the CoMPAS project, and in this tutorial, I would like to show you an editor type plugin that we ship with the CoMPAS distribution called Subscriber Later Binding. This plugin allows to subscribe to Goose and sampled value data using the so-called later binding concept. The plugin is always structured into two lists. Depending on the view you choose, the left-hand side list is the source of the information. So the data points in a Goose or sampled value control block. You can switch between those two by clicking on this button here. The data is structured in the Goose control blocks, as there are in ASCL as well. So in this case, for example, we have 4 gooses and 2 IDs. So 2 gooses per ID. Each of the gooses has a position, status information, and a quality information. When you select a data point on the right-hand side list, you see whether this data point is subscribed and how often it is subscribed. So per subscription, you have one list item here. This, by the way, indicated here as well. So this data point is subscribed twice in this Goose subscriber ID 1 and in the Goose subscriber ID 4. In addition to that, you also have the available to subscribe list, which shows all external references that are not yet subscribed. And this is exactly the point about the latent binding concept. So it has external reference elements in the SCL file that are not yet pointing to a data that they are subscribing. The idea behind it is that you can add inputs to an ID before the configuration process. So you can already upfront say, I am expecting specific data to come in, and this data I already linked to internal functionality. In SCL expressed as the external reference has no reference to the data it's subscribing, but it has an internal attribute, an internal address attribute, sorry, that is pointing to the internal function of the ID. In addition to that, such an external reference can restrict the data that it wants to accept through attributes PLN, PDO, PDA, and pserve type. So PLN, PDO, PDA as a combination allow you to check for the common data class and the basic type that you want to restrict, and the pserve type allows you to restrict the service type that you want to accept. So for example, in this case, a goose. When this check, we do this check automatically when this check is not met. So when the selected data does not meet the restriction of the external reference, we disallow subscribing. Now, to subscribe, you must click on a list item in the available to subscribe list. For example, with this data, I want to subscribe to this external reference. And then you see this external reference is being added so that there is a reference to the data that it subscribes to, and it will be shown in the subscribe list. To unsubscribe, you need to click on the list item in the subscribed list. Then you basically remove the pointer from the external reference to the data that it is subscribing to. Another interesting thing in the subscribe list is highlighting of a subscriber supervision function, which is nothing else than a logical node, algos for gooses and LSVS for sampled value streams. Each of the instances of such a logical node is supervising a specific goose coming into a specific ID. So in this case, algos1 is supervising the goose sent from goose publisher, goose2 sent from goose publisher being subscribed in goose subscriber 1. This logical node gives you the status of the subscription. So whether it is subscribed successfully, and if not so, what is missing? What is the reason why it is not subscribed? These logical nodes can be added in SCL as well. So when I, for example, select this data point and want to subscribe, you see we automatically add another instance of algos. In this case, we add it. The plugin is checking whether there is already an instance that is not used for subscription supervision yet, and we can edit it instead of adding it. All of that depends on whether the ID allows to do so, and this can be described in the services section of the subscriber ID. We check the services section, and if such a subscription supervision is allowed, we either add logical node instance LGOS or LSVS, or we added an existing logical node instance LGOS or LSVS. When you do unsubscribe, and there is a subscription supervision behind that, we do automatically remove that subscription supervision by either removing the logical node instance LGOS or LSVS if it has been created by this plugin, or added back the logical node LGOS or LSVS when it already existed in the SEL file and we just edited it. For each of the lists, you have multiple filter options. Depending on the list, the filter options might change. So the left-hand side list has always something like a subscribed or non-subscribed date filter. So you can choose to show only subscribed or not subscribed data. So subscribed data for just checking whether you've done everything wrong, correct, sorry, or non-subscribed data to filter out all the data already subscribed. You can hide the quality information that might be interesting when you do work with additional other plugins that basically do the subscription of the quality information automatically whenever you click on the status information or other information that you want to subscribe. Then you don't want to see this quality information. And another filter is probably rarely will do something is you can hide uh, FCD type data in the data set of the boost control block. So data, not a leaf data attribute, not a data attribute, but yeah, structured data that is a pointer to the data object with constraint data that you choose. So for example, all the status information in my, I don't know, position, for example. Here, you can hide non-matching pre-configured data. So basically all the elements where a check is done and the check is saying, oh, you cannot subscribe. You can also hide unspecified service types. So whenever a service type is not defined, you can hide that as well. Depending on the engineering process and your restriction in the engineering process, that might be useful. Another thing that you can do is you can change the order of the data in both of the lists, depending on, per default, the order of the data encoded in the SEL file or other yeah, other things that you want to make the order depending on. So such as the description of the data and so in the desk field of the SCDA, or description of the data in the data type template section, so on. And here is the same thing. So you can change the order of these external references that you see. Per default, it is in the same order as an STL file, but you can basically change the order depending on the internal address attribute that is specified in such an external reference, and then or the description, so the desk field of this external reference. There are some settings that changes the behavior of the plugin. You have a read-only mode. By the way, you can see by the color coding of the selected data. You can adapt the check a little bit. So this requirements check or restriction check, we check for common data class and basic type as well. So when you want to subscribe, your data must come from the same common data class as the restriction imposes and must have the same basic type as the restriction imposes. You can change the behavior slightly and say, just look for the service type and the basic type. So for example, if you have data that is coming from an ACT common data class, trip information, for example, and the trip signal general is a Boolean information, you cannot subscribe it to data that is restricted to a common data class that is SPS, for example, single point status. where the status value is a Boolean information as well. But when you select this one, you can do so. When you enable allow external plugins, you will, next to the edit information, send additional information that allows you to, on top of subscribing, doing other actions. And this one, when enabled, it will allow you to change the supervision line. So as I explained, we went by undoing, we automatically uh, basically remove the boost or sample values supervision. If this is deselected, this is not done. So this plugin then leaves this information alone. All right, so you can switch between gooses and sampled value streams. Let me open up a sampled value stream where sampled value streams are defined as an example. So you see a lot more data. So here, for example, filtering mechanisms make much more sense. I can, for example, filter for a goose, or I can filter for a specific logical node, and then I also can filter for example, for that. So all that can be done here with the filter functions. By the way, also on this side, you can filter for description, internal addresses. You can filter for any of the yeah, paths or parents of that external reference, so be the ID or the logical device it is allocated, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is this view, and you can change the view here as well. So when you click on this button, the left-hand side list all of a sudden is not anymore the source of the information, but it's the sink of the information. So all the external references that are defined in this file, which is specifically useful when you want to check which data is already subscribed to this ID. In this view, it is very painful to find that out because you first have to select the data and then see if this data is subscribed already. And this view is visible to you just with one glance, and you can filter for all kinds of stuff. You can see whether an external reference is subscribed to data or not yet subscribing to data. And you can subscribe here as well by selecting the external reference and then picking the data you want to subscribe it to, for example, like so. All right, that was it for this plugin. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next tutorial.